Hello and welcome, I'm your host KB and you're watching the Retrospective. These days, the Land of the Lost property is probably most associated with the 2009 film starring Will Ferrell, but the property's origins actually started as a TV series which first aired in 1974 and ran for 3 seasons. To the land of the lost. To the land of the lost. While seemingly short-lived, the show was quite successful, and the 43 episodes aired in syndication through the 70s and the 80s, and has since seen the complete series released on DVD. Due to the original series finding success in syndication during the 80s, the original production company, Sid and Marty Krofft, decided to reboot the property for a modern audience, and thus we got the 1991 series, Land of the Lost. Living in the land of the lost. Land of the lost. The 1991 series features the same premise as the original series, with the family accidentally crossing into an alternate dimension where dinosaurs and various other unearthly species live. While the premise is the same, there are still plenty of differences between the two shows. The most notable being the change of characters, namely the Porter family is lost here in place of the Marshall family from the original series, and there is also a completely different cast of reoccurring characters. Also, the Marshall family of the original show is lost in a cave system while kayaking, while here the Porters just plummet into an abyss during an earthquake, seemingly in a Hot Wheels car, but miraculously survive somehow. The Porter family, consisting of Father Tom and his children Kevin and Annie, are faced with many challenges in this new unnamed land while struggling to live without modern conveniences. They must forage for food while also trying to avoid the constant threats like dinosaurs, such as the ever-present T-Rex named Scarface. They are also threatened by the Sleestaks, an intelligent lizard-type race who live underground, and are personally my favourite part of the show. Their leader is Shung, the self-proclaimed ruler of the land, who's obsessed with wanting to eat the Porters for some reason. They make for great antagonists, but I feel the show dropped the ball here, as we don't really get much backstory for their race. They're also quite underutilized, appearing in less than half the show's episodes.
Shung, we bring you meat.
This has been a very good day.
This series has more special effects scenes than the original, with its frequent use of animatronics, stop motion, and puppetry. Unfortunately, the effects are quite laughable now, but I remember thinking they were great back in the day, especially since there were no real live action shows of this kind for us kids at the time. The acting here is fairly bad and is made worse due to the show's poor writing. While the stories are fun due to the environments and characters, they lack any real substance. The closest we get to any real emotion is when the Porters magically find their way home and reflect on how much they are missing from their previous lives, only to find out it's all an illusion.
Mom? Is it really you?
Yes, Annie. It's really me.
The original show put emphasis on the survival aspect of the Marshals being dumped in this new land and having to build an experiment in order to survive while also looking for ways to return home. With this series, the Porters are already well established in a fairly unbelievable treehouse and seem to be more interested in making themselves comfortable as opposed to finding a tangible way home. There's also a lot of other sci-fi and fantasy elements here, with the show including travelers from the future, witches, and knights from the past, which give the show a very quirky but fun dynamic. The Porter family are mostly generic characters with no real depth to them. Kevin is by far my favourite, simply for how goofy and stereotypically 90s he is. There are also some painful side characters such as Stink and Tasha, who are featured heavily throughout the show, and while they both are visually interesting, the voicing and antics of the characters can get quite grating, especially in the episode where Tasha can talk.
This is the best thing ever! Now you can be my real girlfriend, Tasha. We can talk about all different kinds of stuff. This is so cool. So what do you want to talk about first, Tasha?
Boys! I want to talk about boys! Boys.
Okay.
I did mention the Slee Stacks were probably my favourite part of the show, but it might have to be a tie between them and the show's theme song, which is just all sorts of brilliant. The show ran for 2 seasons, with 26 episodes being produced between 1991 and 1992, and seems oddly forgotten about now. The release of the live-action movie brought back some attention to the property, but it seemed to only be for the original 1974 series. The 90s series went as far as to have an alright toy line released by Tiger Toys, which was pretty fun, but other than that it has seemingly faded away, with episodes only being available on VHS. While I have a lot of nostalgia and love for the series, and had a ton of fun rewatching it all these years later, its only real appeal aside from nostalgia is for its cheesy practical effects. And that being said, I still would personally love to see a decent DVD release for the series.
This world is strange and new. See the triple moons, but don't you turn your back. You become a snack. Get some Tyrannosaurus. Could be hungry for us. We need to make some friends. The wonder never ends. Now we've crossed the line, fallen through time, living in the land of the lost.
As always, thank you very much for watching. Please go and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode of The Retrospective.